So good evening, everyone. Got quiet very quickly, that's nice. So thank you, everyone, for coming to tonight's distinguished speaker series. I will introduce Mr. Leeds in a few moments. I just have a couple of things to cover first. The first is to say a brief tribute to our professor, Renu Ramnarayanan, and to remember her because she's so instrumental in events like this in the university. So the first thing I'll say to everybody, and this will be dated for most of you students, but there's a TV show called MASH that us older folks remember, and it was a show about the military in Korea and a very, very close-knit community, and very much like the Stillman community, where everybody thought of each other as family and was so kind and nice to each other. And there's an episode where the main character, Hawkeye Pierce, had to give a eulogy for somebody he didn't really know that well, a woman he dated a couple times. And he relied on our diary and stories he heard about the person, and that's what I'm going to be doing too. I'm new here. I've been here for 2 years. Most of my other faculty members have been here far longer than me. But Renu made a great impact on my life, both through her actions with me and also from all the stories I've heard from everybody. And so the first one I just want to share is that she was a wonderful colleague, a wonderful faculty member. Renu would help anybody, anytime, with anything. She always had time for you. If I promoted an event of hers and she barely knew me, she would come by my office and thank me. And so she was a wonderful person. But she was even more wonderful to students. She cared so much about all of you. Many of us come here and teach, and we care deeply about students and teach, but Renu went above and beyond. She organized events like today's speaker event, field trips, set up a club for supply chain management, and award ceremonies, all types of things. And so, you know, she's here at Stillman 30 years, I believe, close to 30 years, and she'll be sorely missed. She was a truly wonderful person. So I thank all of you for coming out this evening in her memory, and I hope that this program will remind you of her and help us all, continue her memory and her great work here at Seton Hall. So the second item I need to speak to you about is exceptionally important because my boss asked me to do it. So it's just to tell you about the university's new business analytics major or concentration. So we've had a certificate program at the school for 4 or 5 years, I believe, but there's a new major as of this semester, and the website's being worked on, and it'll be up very, very soon, and it's an awesome field, and Mr. Leeds will tell us all about it, and you're more than welcome to speak with any faculty member at Stillman about it also. It's a tremendous career path, very well paying, very interesting, and do good, interesting work and so forth. So feel free to engage any of us about that. And so last but not least, I'm going to introduce tonight's guest speaker. So Steve Leeds is the founder of Real Analytics Insight. It's an analytics company based in New Jersey. He has 40 plus years of experience in the field working with some awesome companies, American Express, Novartis, Ironwood Pharmaceuticals, Donnelly Marketing, and Bausch Health. Steve holds a Ph.D. in statistics from the University of Connecticut, where he also taught as a lecturer, those types of topics. And one of the really interesting things about Steve is that he's not just a numbers person, but he can help us understand the qualitative elements of the numbers and how to interpret data, which is really, really important. Numbers are numbers, but you need to put context on things in life no matter what you're doing. So without further ado, I'll introduce Steve and Steve Leeds, and thank you so much for being here.
First, I'm going to check if this sounds like the microphone's working. I'm going to walk around a bit, and I'm going to work the clicker at the same time, so this is a lot. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it, and those of you online, don't know how many you are, but thank you for coming as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about analytics, but I'm going to talk about my journey too and how I got here. So let's see if, great. So I'm going to talk about journey from college, how it all got started. Before I got to college, my senior year in high school, they got, and this is many, many years ago, this is the 70s. They got a mainframe computer at my high school. It was a PDP-11. We were one of the few high schools in the area that had one. So we were able to actually run programs, and it was a teletype type of thing. You typed in things and you'd see, that's the way the computer ran. We were amazed by it. It was the most amazing thing we had before that was a calculator, and we were blown away with a calculator. So go back in time, that's what we were experiencing. We would get up real early, the computer nerds, of which I was one of, get up real early in the cold. They'd let us in the school before any classes started, and we couldn't wait to write programs and try it all out. There was a lot of Star Trek programs back at that time. So, but it was amazing to watch it do something. You could actually have battles on the computer. So we were totally addicted to it. And so right as I got out of my senior year, I said, I'm going to be a computer science major. This is what I'm going to do. And I went to Stony Brook, out on Long Island, and was very excited to be a computer science major. Now, back then, in order to write a line of code, you had to go to a key punch machine and type in the code into a key punch machine. I know that's probably alien to everybody here. What? It's a card, and you punch out holes. The machine punches holes out, and that's one line of code. And you have to wait online to type that in because there's other people doing the same thing in the computer center. When I got there, I couldn't believe this was going to be programming. This is what I was going to be doing, and it was frightening there to 1, 2 in the morning because you're waiting online just to type a line of code. And then what you do is you collect all the cards, and you'd put them in a rubber band. You'd go to a mainframe person who would take your cards, and you didn't know when the program would run, and you'd get an output of green and white, a green and white really thick paper, and you'd look and see if there are any errors. If you made one mistake on any of those lines, it would say your code didn't run, you've got a syntax error, you got to go back and type again, and you go and there's a line. That was what computer science was like back then. So imagine you collect all these cards and you run the program and you see if it works, and that's your computer science experience. I really didn't enjoy that much, but that was the state of the art at the time. And many people, when they put their cards together, they didn't number them. So one night, about 1:30 in the morning, I remember this guy who had about 300 lines of code, which meant he had about 300 cards. And he slipped, and all the cards went flying in the air. He didn't have them numbered, so he had to figure out what the sequence was. And he actually lost it, and he started screaming at 1:30 in the morning. And it was one of those screams where you kind of stop in your tracks, and it just really shakes you, especially at 1:30 in the morning when you've been working on all this. And he did that, and I thought at that moment, I don't want to be a computer science major anymore. This guy probably has no idea that he changed my trajectory by screaming at 1:30 in the morning. But I said, that's it. I'm done. So what did I do? I said, well, I could go to applied math and statistics at Stony Brook. By the way, Stony Brook was a great school. I learned some incredible things, had some of the greatest classes. So I went to applied math and statistics. Still didn't quite know what I was going to do, what kind of job I was going to get, but I wasn't going to be in computer science anymore. And I had learned all the languages back then, PL1, Pascal, Fortran, COBOL, Assembler. We had to learn all that stuff. I had learned BASIC in high school. I thought that was the only language out there in computer science. Was I wrong? But I learned all the code, was very good at it, but I didn't want to do computer science. So I ended up going to applied math and statistics, which was mostly mathematics and combinatorics, which was very interesting, and also operations research. In my senior year, I took a statistics class, my very first one. It was a probability and statistics class taught by a gentleman by the name of Gary Simon, who was so engaging and so funny that I said, maybe I should be in statistics. I didn't really know anything about it, but I loved his class, and it actually wasn't boring, because the stereotypical statistics class was boring, same textbooks, same problems, widgets. Nobody was really very interested. But his was fascinating. And so I asked him, well, what should I do? I'd like to stay in this. This is pretty cool stuff. This is not what I thought it was. He said, I went to Stanford with a guy named Alan Gelfand. He's at University of Connecticut. Why don't you go look him up, see if you could do a graduate program there? So I did. And I went to University of Connecticut. I got my master's and Ph.D. under Dr. Alan Gelfand, who is one of the top, he's a rock star in Bayesian statistics worldwide. He's a very big name, and I was studying under him. Had a great time. I didn't want to leave UConn. I actually tried to take as long as I could to do my master's and PhD because I enjoyed it there so much. But I finished in '87, and now I have to look for something. I ended up at Donnelly Marketing in Stamford, Connecticut. I built models for direct mail, figuring out who's going to respond to a direct mail campaign. Big stuff. Everybody wanted to know that. They would get millions of records, and they just mail them out, and they didn't know who to mail to. But we could get information on people who had already responded or didn't respond to a mail campaign and build a model and figure out who should you mail to without wasting all this time. And it's big savings of money, and so I did that for Donnelly Marketing. I then went to American Express. They gave me a call. They said, you want to work here? I said, yeah. You kidding me? I have to go to American Express. Went to American Express from '89 to '94. I was there for the first World Trade Center bombing in the basement. I missed it by about 5 minutes. That was an exciting time. But American Express was my introduction into the politics of business. It was a great company, great experience, but you had to be a little bit more aware of what might be going on behind the scenes that maybe you weren't aware of, and that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit. I then, after that bombing, I didn't really want to go to the city anymore, so I started my own company, stayed in New Jersey, called it the Marketing Investigators. I built a lot of models, direct mail for credit card companies, insurance companies. They all wanted it, and they pay nicely for it. So I did pretty well for about 7 years. And then in 2001 and 9/11, everyone knows what happened in 9/11. That shook me up again. And I said, I don't know if I want to do consulting anymore because I got to travel, and I don't want to travel on a plane. So I looked around my neighborhood and said, what are the closest companies to where I live? And one of them was Novartis Pharmaceuticals. And so I went to Novartis. Incredible experience, worked there for 10 years straight, and then I did an 11th year, came back for a short stint. And then from there, I went to a consulting company in Florham Park. Right now, they're in Morristown. So they do lots of models and build all sorts of analytics for companies all over, mostly in pharma. And I went to Bausch Health, which was formerly Valiant, and was at Ironwood Pharmaceutical. They make Linzess. You might have seen the TV ad, Yes, Linzess. I'm not going to say any more. And now I have a company, Real Analytic Insights. So I bounced between consulting, corporation, back to consulting, and I've learned a lot over close to 40 years. It isn't 40 yet, but I've been doing analytics, and I've watched the tremendous explosion of technology and analytics. But I'm not going to talk a lot about the technology. In 2009, I saw an article, and I couldn't believe the title. It said, for today's graduate students, just one word, statistics. I was in statistics. Nobody ever wrote about statistics. It was never in the mainstream. And here it was in the New York Times. And I actually looked up Carrie Grimes, and she was working at Google in this article, and she evidently is still working at Google as a VP of engineering. They have different title names. I don't know a lot about it, but she was an anthropologist, and she got hooked on analytics, statistics, and she stuck with it. It's still hot. The thing is that statistics, this term from the mainstream kind of went away, and it got replaced by other things. There were terms, I don't know if you remember the term data mining. Data mining sounded so much better than statistics and regression. And actually, I thought they were selling goods with data mining that weren't quite true. It was a little bit too good to be true. And so I wrote some popular and unpopular articles. I had an article called Data Mining, Beware of the Shaft. That was one. So, in 2011, would you believe if I told you that Brad Pitt will be in a major feature film where he's reading about the binomial distribution? Well, it happened. It was called Moneyball, and he was on a plane reading about the binomial distribution. Wow. Statistics, analytics, I don't care what you call it, has arrived. Brad Pitt's in a movie about that, and actually that movie is all about analytics in baseball. It's a great movie. I mean, I'm a little biased. Obviously, it's what I do, but the idea caught on that you may not know a lot, you may not have the money to spend for things, but if you're really good with the data, you can actually do some incredible things. And that was the story in Michael Lewis's Moneyball, which they made a movie out of. And if you haven't seen it and you like analytics, you should definitely see it. So 13 years ago, these were the popular books. Super Crunchers, which I happen to love, Competing in Analytics, Signal and the Noise, and of course, Moneyball. That was 13 years ago, and those analytics were starting to become hot. You notice I didn't say statistics anymore because that term was gone from the lexicon. It's still out there, but they don't write it in the mainstream. Everything is analytics, business analytics. So analytics was in high demand, it still is, but it was underutilized back then. Well, since 2020, it must have gotten better, right? Because we've gotten all these newfangled techniques. We had data mining, we've got machine learning, we've got AI, we've got generative AI. It's gotta be better. People are probably connecting in business all over the place. It's probably going so smoothly. But if you actually look at some of the surveys, so in October of 2020, Gartner, who does a lot of work in this area, came out with a survey, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a chart that they put together. Marketing analytics fails to meet leadership expectations. How could that be? Well, we're going to look and see why. June of 21, majority of organizations are still at the beginner level of insights-driven business maturity. Only 7% are at an advanced level. What? 7%? That's awful. How could this be? It'll get better. February 24, that's this year. Sales analytics has less influence on sales performance. So the trend is not going well in terms of what you see out there, but in every survey and in every article, it always ends with this. But over the next 12 to 18 months, we're excited about something which will improve, and things are going to change, and it's going to get better. I have watched this my whole career, and I know why it hasn't gotten better. That's what I'm going to get to next. It's more of the bedside manner, the softer side of analytics, which nobody talks about. They want to hit you with all the fancy techniques, all the fancy software, all the technical skills. Very important to have. I don't want to say those aren't important, but if you don't have this other piece, this other softer skill, you're going to struggle. So what is it? Well, so let me talk about the Gartner survey. So they asked marketing analytics and their leaders and the mid-level people what they thought. And predictably, the executives said, I don't think there's anything here. I'm not seeing anything. It's not what I had expected. The mid-level people who are working on the stuff, I think it's working great. Well, if the executives who are ultimately approving all the budgets don't really think it's worth it, then ultimately it's probably not a good thing. So this is what the executives are saying, and you would think the mid-level people would be a little bit higher than 45%, but it's still the highest number for that. But the bottom line is that is still an issue. This was in 2020. This is not actually any different today. So it doesn't matter what the year is. You still are trying to apply the same solution, and you're not looking at the fundamental problem. So what were the issues? Well, I highlighted some of them that I've run into. The analysis doesn't present a clear recommendation. The results of the analysis are not actionable. That's not good. Analyzing data takes too long. Analysis does not account for business context. Analysis is too difficult to understand. These are analysts presenting. The people who are responding are the clients, the ones who are receiving the data. Now, at the very top, I didn't put a box around it, but I find it amusing that the number one answer is that, as to why analytics isn't used, the data findings conflict with an intended course of action. In other words, I had it all figured out, and you came in and you ran an analysis, and you told me something that doesn't comport with what I wanted. That's a real thing in business. You may not like it, but somebody kind of feels they know more. I've been in this business a long time. I've run this business. You can't tell me that this isn't going to work. You can't tell me that AI came up with this and I should use it. I don't even understand what it came up with. So you have to be mindful of the fact that the folks you're working for are the ones who are paying your salary. And I'm not telling you to just go along with everything they do, but you want to try to start there and then work your way around. Because if you just go in and say, I ran the tool, this is the number, live with it, it's not going to go well. So this was the feedback. So I developed something very simple. I call this the fundamental theorem of analytics because it's so simple and people don't really think about it. So the what, why, and how. The what of data analysis is what is the data showing? What trends are emerging? What are the key performance indicators? That's what KPIs stand for. What are they all doing? Everybody's very good at the what. Where you go, they love showing you data. Here's a dashboard. Look at the drop downs. Don't they look pretty? I put the color in. You see the data donut? Isn't that nice? Oh, actually, if I could pivot on this, it's like, that's the what. Everybody's showing you what's happening. The minute any of you see a graph that has some sort of anomaly in it, and your eyes look for an anomaly, because if there's no anomaly, it's a boring chart. But if there's something that spikes or something that stands out, your first question, and it doesn't take long, is why? Why is that happening? The why question is the really hard one. It's where the analytics meets the business. That's when you've got to know a little bit more about the business that you're working in. And if you're starting out, you may not know a lot about the business. And that's why if you work somewhere, you want to go seek people out who might know. You don't want to isolate yourself. You may have a theory as to why, but it's always good to bounce it off somebody because you'll get better at it. And after a while, you'll get to know the business so well that you'll understand the why question. Many of these tools, even AI, doesn't always know the why. Why is that happening? What's the reason for that? So the why question, why are we seeing certain things? Why is a group performing better than another? They call this the deep dive. We got to do a deep dive. Every time I hear the word deep dive, I panic because I know it's just going to be a long project. It's going to be a compressed timeline, but it's really important. You have to know why things are happening. They could be happening for something that everyone already knew about. And you're running down the hall and you're all excited about an insight that's not an insight at all. So the why question is critical, but you're not done yet. If you find out the why, you've got to go to, okay, great. How do we address what we found? How do we implement it? Because if you can't implement it, it's a nice to know. It's something you could talk to people. Gee, all our customers have green eyes. That's fascinating. What can I do with that? I don't know, but they all have green eyes. I think there could be something to that. Well, how do we address that? What can we do with that? I'm not sure you could do a lot with it. So that's the how question. That's implementing decisions. If you hit all three of these, I've called this hitting the analytic trifecta. And that's hard to do. But if you do this well, then you'll actually become irreplaceable. But it's not easy. It's not an easy path. But you want to think about these three things, the what, why, and how. This is the fundamental of any analytic exercise. And as I said earlier, many people stop at the what. They don't want to learn about the why. They're the FedEx of data analysis. I will deliver the data to you on time and tomorrow. That's great. What does it mean? Look, I don't look at the packages. I don't know what's in them. It's not my job. Yes, it is your job. It's a hard part of your job. And it means you got to talk to people, which a lot of analysts don't want to do. But you got to go learn the business and ask questions. So this is how things work. Now, one of the pictures, this used to be what a business meeting looked like. So imagine that this is now a Zoom call. So I could have put it in, but I didn't want to put in all these strange people in boxes. But essentially, you know, you have a team meeting, there's business data just came in, and you have all these questions. What are the trends by state? Why is there a decline in the West? What was the ROI of that campaign? I need a list of individuals who are X and Y. What was the impact of the storm in the East? Was there an impact? In terms of supply chain in pharma, a lot of times there's issues with the manufacturing plants. All of a sudden, they can't make pills. What happened? What do you mean they can't make pills? Well, people didn't come in, they had an issue, they were laying off people, and well, that affects the whole supply chain. What are we doing about that? So that could be a meeting, a fun one on Monday morning. Then somebody pulls you aside who's responsible, maybe in marketing, to say, look, I know you sat through the meeting. Okay, I'm glad you were there. You had to be there. I got a lot of requests for analytics here. So I need you to put together the last 12 months of data of sales. We're going to need to look at the ROI of these campaigns. I need you to pull a list of individuals. Send me a sheet for the monthly sales. Oh, we need this pretty quickly. How long do you think that's going to take? And you're usually overwhelmed, like, I don't even know how to do any of this yet. And they're like, yeah, I know, but how long is it going to take? So you learn the systems, and as an analyst, this is the part most people don't see. The analytic people see it, but the marketing salespeople don't see it. There's this big database in the background, or many databases. You're trying to get at it with some BI software, and you're expected to do all this stuff. You're supposed to know where all the relevant data is located. You have to understand what each data feed represents. Are they on time? Oh, that data doesn't come until Wednesday. Oh, you have to know that. I thought we had it now. We just bought the data. What do you mean it doesn't come until Wednesday? Well, it has to go through the system. They have to approve it. They've got to check it. It's going to take a week. I need to know it today. Don't have it. Don't have it. Okay. So not only summarizing the data, but provide insights of what data is telling that's important, provide information in an accurate manner, make the deliverable easy to understand. So you've got to go through all this in the background. Nobody sees that. Nobody knows, nobody cares that you're doing all that work. They just want the output. And you're just trying to find data. So then you find the data. I'm sorry. So what are the types of things you're going to see? So there's a term ad hoc, which sometimes almost everything becomes ad hoc when everybody's panicking. It's the day-to-day questions that the business needs to answer, and you don't know what they're going to be. If you're good, you'll know what they're going to be because you're involved in it. But usually something happens and they react. A storm could happen, and you have to react to, all right, so what does it mean? How much business did we lose because of the storm? Are we going to make it up? ROI, list generation, reports, forecasts. These are all the ad hoc things you're asked for. Longer term is fun. Modeling segmentation, that's nice to do. The thing is, you're kind of not seen as much. So the ad hoc is harder, but you become a really valuable person because they go to you all the time. Whereas on the modeling side, even though they value what you do, it's a longer period of time. So if you could somehow at one point do both, that would be great. But most of the ad hoc is what they really want. And sometimes it could be just filling in numbers in a table, which is, you know, I didn't go to school just to fill numbers in. Yeah, well, you're going to have some of that too, and I'll talk about that. Sometimes they want you to optimize a process or something went wrong, and you need to fix it. So you could have a whole bunch of meetings on cleaning up or improving an existing process. These are all the things you're going to encounter. What about the data? Well, there's data on customers, prospects, campaigns, transactional data, historical data, competitive information possibly, third-party data, people selling it to you, digital websites, social media data. There's tons of data out there. How are you going to pull that all together and make insights out of that? What are the KPIs? Everybody likes using these KPIs. What are the key performance indicators? So you need to know all the terminology of the company. They call this big data. I'm not a fan of big data, but it's out there. I can't stop it. A lot of times you're going to encounter what I call the Swiss cheese database. Somebody sends you a data set. The boss says, we just got the data in. This is great. So you have it, so I should be expecting to see all sorts of stuff from you today. And you look at it, and it looks like this. Now, that third column, I want to talk a little bit about. Back in the day, and even today, when there was missing data, they, in some of the earlier systems, they couldn't put a blank in there. They had to make it a number if it was a numerical piece of data. So they always used, for a one-digit number, 9, 2 digits, 99, 999. So I saw many years ago somebody ran an analysis at the credit card company I was at, and we got bulk data, which was automobile data. How many cars did people own currently? And they ran a correlation, and they found that the correlation was positive, meaning that the more cars they had, the more likely they were to purchase a product. And that seemed counterintuitive to what everybody believed, but that's what the data said, so it must be true. If you dig a little further, you found out that there was a spike in the 9 category. So there were a lot of people who, it went 1, 2, 3, 9. And there were a lot of people who had 9 cars. I never met anybody who had 9 cars in a current time. Maybe over their lifetime, maybe not even that many. But there were tons of people who had 9 cars. When we found out that 9 was missing, everything changed. So really what the insight was that people who we didn't know that much about, we didn't have much data on, were more responsive than people who were constantly getting direct mail. Oh, that's a very different insight. But if you don't know the data and you run correlations, everything's going to look like the higher the number, the better. And it had nothing to do with the analysis. So now you have to become an expert on the data elements themselves. It's a lot. But it's part of, after a while, you get good at it. You know what's worth looking at and what isn't. Okay, so that's the 9-car story. Inventors with monthly sales data. This is very common. To this day, it's amazing how people look at February and say, why is February sales always so poor? Every year, I don't understand it. February is down. We must be doing something wrong. Are we not coming out of the winter the right way? We got to get a meeting together because something's going on in February every year. Well, one thing we know about February is that it has fewer days than any other month. This year it had a leap day, so it had 29 days. That's still lower than any other month. When you're counting the number of days of sales in a month, February is always going to lose. So if you just show the raw data, it's going to look like there's a weird trend in February, especially if you end the trend on February and you fit a straight line, it'll curl down at the bottom. That's not good. You don't want to do that. Well, this year something else happened beyond February. So look at the June data. You notice on the top left that it's going up, and then June is down. And when they got that June data, they panicked and said, what's going on with June? Usually June's good because July is a summer month and we get killed. What's going on with June? I mean, April has 30 days, June has 30 days, there's no holidays in June. Why isn't June any good? And people run around crazy and panicked. And it turns out that the number of weekdays in June of 2024 was 20 days. So you got to look at and the business comes from the weekdays for the most part, not the weekends. So if you didn't know that, you're going to look at June and react, which everybody did. And then I had to tell them June had 20 days, 20 work days. Oh, okay. So what do you do? How do you avoid this? There's something called, some people call it normalization. I like to call it decalendarization, getting rid of the calendar. I don't want the calendar to be part of the analysis. I don't want to worry about the fact that February has fewer days or that June, it was short this year. So decalendarization actually adjusts it. So you could develop these factors in advance and you can multiply by them and get what you want for those months and find out, okay, so what happens if I normalize it or decalendarize it? And what happens is, all of a sudden, this nice, pretty trend appears when you actually run the factors. And so you see this a lot and say, by the way, the trend is fine. You were reacting to stuff, and you were calling these panic meetings over nothing. The trend is nice and smooth. So I'll use the word normalization because it rolls off the tongue a little fast. So if you normalize the data, it's actually better. This is something else with monthly data in almost every business that people don't do. Some do, many don't. And if I tell them, can I normalize it to send to the company? No, because you can't change the sales data. It's got to be put out. I said, what about for analytic purposes? You could do it for analytic purposes, but you can't send it out to everybody. So then you have to go around to everybody and say, yeah, June had 20 days. Oh, so this is the kind of thing that folks experience. It's a really basic example, but many of the machine learning tools won't pick that up. It's really basic. How do I know that? I've been around long enough. I've watched this long enough. I use what I call the official intelligence. I'm not a fan of anything artificial. So the official intelligence is important. Okay. When I looked at behaviors, and this is something you should think of, this isn't just analytics. There are kind of 4 behaviors when people work. There's the proactive behavior, which I always thought that's the best to be. You should be proactive. Not always, but being proactive, you're thinking a lot about the business. That's good. You're giving suggestions. You're doing things a little bit more. When you're reactive, you're essentially, somebody's giving you a request, you fulfill the request. They're happy. You're not going to really give any other feedback. You'll just say, here's what it is. You asked for it. You got it. Great. Then there's the directive personality. No, wait a minute. You're coming to me for an analysis. We've done this for the last 3 years. We're not doing that. We're going to waste a lot of money. I've been here before. I'm directing you to not do that exactly. You should probably go here. And they might be put off, but it's important because your experience is important. And then there's the classic stereotypical picture of an analyst, the reclusive analyst who is hiding out and wants to work on the data and just doesn't want to be bothered. And in the kind of the remote environment, you can kind of pull that off a little bit. But if you're coming into headquarters and you're hiding, I call it going into the cave. Sometimes you got to come out of the cave because stuff changes while you're in the cave and you don't know about it. And then you really get upset when you find out that everything in the project has changed. So what are the pros and cons of each? And there are. So when you're proactive, you're going after things, that's great. You're thinking about the business. People appreciate that. But at the same time, you could go too far and you could take a project somewhere where they don't want to go, and maybe they don't like all the suggestions. You've got to read that. You've got to see that, hey, wait a minute, I think you're going too far here. Reactive people get the job done. The problem is that they themselves, the reactive people, they feel like, is this all there is to the career? All I do is order fulfillment. I just don't want to be an order fulfillment person forever. And they have trouble making that jump over to being proactive. So but reactive people are very popular in companies. They like them. They run stuff, they get it done, they don't ask questions. I like that. Directive people are good because they may save you money and you may be making a bad decision if they know what they're talking about. And then the reclusive ones, they need time to do the work. So it's important they're doing the work. So which one's the best to be? Actually, you need to adapt to whatever situation you have. So the best one is the adaptive analyst, which is a mixture of all these based on whatever the environment and the requests are. You need to morph into each one of these based on what happens. And you may not be able to do all these, but build those skills. How are your clients wired? Time check, by the way. What do we have on time? 13? Okay. How are your clients wired? Well, on the business side, they may be acquisition focused. I want to look at only new. I want to look at new people coming in. Who are the new people? That's important, but sometimes if you don't look deeply into the new people, they may eat your lunch for you. It's something called churn. Wow, we're getting a lot of new customers. Yeah, so I've seen this my whole career. Credit card companies, hey, we're getting a lot of cards, and they have bad credit. Oh, that's not good. Yeah, but we have a lot of new cards. A lot of new credit cards, not good. You have to take a look at that. So this happens in a lot of industries. Acquisition focused, retention focused, financially focused, detailed data focused, summary data. So everybody's wired differently. I don't want to go into too much detail on this based on time, but the purpose here is to know how the person you're working for is wired. That's the takeaway. If they're sales force focused and you're telling them about marketing, how do you think that's going to go? But I'm really good at marketing. Yeah, I know, but I really want to know about the sales force. Or you're telling them about the sales force and they just want to know, are we spending money wisely? So they're more financially focused. You need to make a study of your customers. And I'll say that again. You need to make a study of your customers. How? One thing you could ask them that tells what they're all about is, what keeps you up at night in the business? What is keeping you up at night? Not what else is keeping you up at night. I don't really want to know about that. But what's keeping you up at night from a business standpoint? What are you worried about? That'll tell you how they're wired. And then there's other challenging behaviors. There's the sieve, where all they do is they get information from a meeting and they just dump it on you. Build my slides. That's always my fun one, where, oh, this is great. Could you just build my slides for me? So you have a lot of laziness there. And I talk about it in the book I wrote, where I say how to handle this. So I'm not going to spend. And then there's death by scenario, Mario, where they just say, well, what if this happens? Could we analyze this? What if we do this? Could we analyze that? And they give you about 10 of them. And it's brutal. Most common deliverables, PowerPoint slides, illustrating Excel. So PowerPoint and Excel is still the currency out there. And I know many of you look at that, and it's just the way it is. That's the way there are some companies that use other things, but you need to make sure you build skills in both of these. And don't say, yeah, PowerPoint's not going to be around. You know, Excel's great for this, but I'm going to do something in R or Python. Yeah, fine, for the program, but you don't want to present it. You don't want to present Python code or stuff like that. Good habits. Make sure you check your work. It's amazing how people don't even check their work. Do the numbers make sense? I don't know. Again, I'm FedEx of data. You got to look at it. Do charts have weird trends? Yeah. Do you know why? No good. You've got to understand why. Don't put out a slide like that, because people are going to focus on that. Deliver information that's easy to read. Make Excel files printable. People still like to do a file print. Used to be on a printer. They used to carry paper around. Now they make it a PDF. They still want the PDF to look normal. If you do a file print and you don't align the Excel sheet, it's all over the place. So go through the trouble of aligning that. Don't make graphs too busy. Some people get so wrapped up and put so much information on a slide that the minute I look at it, I don't even know where I'm supposed to start. And that's frustrating for somebody who's trying to receive a presentation. You notice that I'm kind of feeding you one line at a time. It's much easier to digest a presentation than me throwing a slide out with 15 things for you to read. Get feedback from your colleagues. Make friends. They'll help you. You can help them. You will get better. Get to the point. Please get to the point. Key takeaways: analytics and analytical skill are in high demand. Companies are looking for people who have strong analytical skills, enthusiasm, and willingness to work. Not every request is going to be exciting. You're going to be asked for stuff you're not going to really enjoy, and you're going to feel like, I went through too much. You're going to have moments like that. Just learn from it. See if maybe you could automate something to make life easier for you. Try to align with how your clients are wired, as I mentioned. Know the software. Get good at certain skills. Build your skills. It's important to build your skills. And figure out the type of company you want to work at and see what they're doing. Learn about them. Make a company a study. If you go into an interview, if you have an interview, you don't really know anything about the company, you haven't shown that passion. So you want to prepare and really learn about stuff. Make studies of things. It's worth it. Also, learn how to use pivot tables. I know many of you already do. If you don't, get good at them. They're really valuable and very powerful. Check your work. I said that before. Provide clean summaries of reports. Work on your presentation skills. Present to one of your colleagues. They'll tell you it really stinks. You'll know. You don't want to do that live. You'll learn why it's no good. Okay. I want to say something about generative AI, because I know that folks are interested about AI. Generative AI is essentially AI where it's creating something new that didn't exist before. It's not just looking up information and spitting it back out. And it's fascinating. I am very interested in it. I do some of it, not as much for analytics, but for some other things. So what are the pros? It can query, and in the analytical context, it can query databases using natural language. So you could speak to it in English, and it'll understand you. That's pretty impressive. These are part of the large language models. It can be a great expert advisor or sounding board. I do use it as a sounding board for things. It can find patterns in large volumes of data. It improves productivity. It could actually do coding for you. That's kind of cool. It could maybe even translate codes and put it in another language. That's still not quite there yet, but it is impressive. It may show you something you didn't think of. That's what I use it for mostly. The cons, if you don't follow the compliance rules, AI doesn't know your compliance rules. Data privacy concerns, where are you getting that data? Many may generate something completely fictional. I've had people complain to me about, I pulled up a case and it never existed. Or they said, who worked at this company back then? And they come up with a name and that person never existed. So that's a little scary. Like, where is it coming up? So you got to check this out. So as I said before, I like using this as a guide, but at the end of the day, it's your softer skills for you that are going to make the difference. It's not the fancy stuff. Your clients don't care about the fancy stuff. They have a business to run. If you can use these to your advantage, that's fine. But you don't want to tell them what's going on in the kitchen or how you made the food. When you're at a restaurant, you just want the food. You don't care about, oh, you know, I used this, and I went here, and I bought that. I don't care. I'm just hungry. That's how your clients are. Leadership does not like experimental stuff. They don't like spending on it. And again, if you remember from back on that Gartner slide at the beginning, the very first one that said it didn't actually line up with what our plans were, that's the same thing here. They don't like new stuff. Even if it may work a little better, they may not be a fan of it. Okay, I wrote this all in a book. So it's been something that had been bothering me for a while, and I wrote a book called The Analytic Detective. And it actually, you have a QR code if you want to look up at the QR code. It's up there. I'll have it on a second slide as well. It was kind of a labor of love to write this, and I go through in the book all the different soft skills that you need. When I released it, I didn't promote it. In the first week, it was the #1 new release in business statistics and in market research business. Without any promotion, it was that popular. People said, take a picture of the Amazon seal, because it won't last. It lasted for a week. So I was very excited that I made 2 categories as the top new release. The reviews are very good, which makes me happy. It's very non-technical. It's a good read. It will make you think, and it'll make you think in ways that aren't technical. Like, wow, I didn't realize that. So this is what I should do if this happens. I've seen people's careers get derailed over something that didn't look like they did anything wrong. I'll give you one example. I don't know if it really happens as much because people aren't in the workplace, but I'm an analyst. I go into the elevator, and the CEO of the company is in the elevator and says, Steve, right? You're Steve. Yeah. So I saw those numbers this morning. What did you think of them? And I say, well, I thought they could have been better. Oh, that's an interesting insight. Next thing I know, my boss is calling me an hour later. Did you see the CEO in the elevator? Yeah, I did. What did you tell him? I said, I thought the numbers were going to be better. Yeah, we got a problem because now we got to do a project. She's very upset about it. I wish you thought that through a little bit. I was just telling him the truth. Doesn't matter. And you know what? When it comes time for somebody who does that for promotion or getting on a big project, somebody remembers something. I can tell you so many people. I've had people in my group who, throughout the ages, who made that one misstep, and somebody high up never forgot it. And it's a shame, but it happens. So you have to, there was a book by Daniel Goleman. He talked about emotional intelligence, EQ, emotional IQ. You need to have emotional intelligence. You're not going to learn that in an analytics class, but you need to figure out how you're going to deal with these things. And they're difficult. I do talk about them in the book, the different examples. And I also am on a podcast from last year with Greg Kihlstrom. So with that, I think I made time. Yes, close, a little over, hopefully not too much. 2 minutes. Okay, so with that, are there any questions from the audience? And give them a mic, I guess. Yeah, go ahead.
Could you give the students
Hello?
here sort of a roadmap of what type of technologies would be useful for them to learn if they want to pursue data analytics and the things you spoke about today?
Sure. The answer is with everything. It depends on the job that you're going to. I have found. Can they hear me online? Do I need to grab the mic? Okay. All right. Thanks. The question was, what technologies should folks know? Believe it or not, get really good at Excel. I am amazed with the things that Excel can do. I spoke to a colleague of mine. We used to do lots of coding in SAS and Excel and Access and some other languages, and he told me this is probably a week ago, I could do everything in Excel I need. Even the big files I can pull in. There's lots of tricks you could do with really large databases. But as far as technology, Power BI is good if you want to do some more advanced querying, and that's an Excel thing. Sometimes there's add-ins that people write for specific types of things you want to do, like Solver. Solver's really a tremendous tool. I found that with all the languages I've written in, I could do almost anything in Excel now, which is incredible. It's an incredibly powerful tool that most people only know about 10% of what it does. And that's impressive. But, you could obviously, there is, Tableau and Click and SciSense, and there's a whole bunch of other tools, depending on the company that's looking at it. And then there's some new ones out there, which escape me right now. You also want to have programming skills to pull data. So I'm much older, so that means I'd be using SAS. But even today, I'm not using SAS. Using Python and R are the two big ones. So Python and R many years ago used to be neck and neck, and Python is now overtaken R. R is still good, but folks I've spoken to in business say, yeah, a lot of the young people coming in are using Python. So, get your Python skills down. It's free open source. But again, you're using it in the background. As far as AI stuff, look into it. It's interesting. As far as for analytics, it's still very early, but it can do a lot of things for you. You could ask it questions and it'll give you some interesting answers, and it may even write up. I'm not going to say it's going to write essays like in school, because that's dangerous stuff. You're not doing that. But because it could figure out whether it was AI generated. But for example, if I have to write a proposal, I hate writing proposals. I'll give AI all the information and say, could you write a proposal for me? And it writes a really nice proposal. So I like it for that. So there's a lot of good things it's doing, and it is getting better all the time. But remember, it's not going to, so there's two camps in AI right now. There's those people who are in complete denial about AI. It's not going anywhere. I've seen this hype. There's even something called the Gartner hype cycle, that it gets to the peak, which it's at right now, and it's coming down. And then the question is it going to survive, or is it just going to die out? So there's some people who are in total denial. There was a survey on Slack that said only about 30% are using it in business right now. And on average, women are very against it. So the survey also said that there was a higher percent of women, I think it was 2/3, more than 2/3 of women said, no, don't. They said why, the answer was they felt like it robs the creativity. So those are some of the surveys right now. So there's one camp where people are in complete denial, and then there's this other camp where it's going to take my job. AI is going to do everything, and it's going to take my job. That's not going to happen either. So the answer is in the middle, where it can be an assistant to you. It is not going to make decisions. It doesn't know your business. It doesn't know the people you're working with. And the people you're working with pay the bills, and they're not going to want to be told by some program that this is what they should do next, given all the years they've been doing it. So I think it's going to meet somewhere in the middle. I don't know how it's going to play out, and it's probably going to be very different based on the industry. So that's my long-winded answer. Any other questions? Yes? I'll repeat it.
Steve, thank you so much for the presentation. That was great. My question is more in terms of the book that you shown by you. You presented some of the heuristics with those graphs, right? You said in February only 28 days are there, and that's why maybe sales may be kind of less. So what kind of or sorts of heuristics that your book have is related to statistics that would be very interesting to read? Thank you.
So the question was, what type of heuristics? I think for the most part is, I don't come in with, I mean, I have a bag of tricks that I can do with data that I know, and that's something I've just developed on my own. I think the answer is, you will find as you're involved in whatever company or business or wherever you're working, that you need to, again, connect with the people side of it. I think if you focus too much on the technical side, you're going to get put in a corner. And a lot of times your clients won't tell you they don't know what you're talking about. They won't tell you. So, and this is kind of that quiet disagreement or that quiet disappointment where they have a very bright individual on the other end, but they're talking over their head, and they're like, I'm just trying to answer a question my boss asked me. So you really want to make a connection with your clients and understand them, almost live in their brain. And that's a different skill set. And then once you understand, oh, okay, so you could even do it's called playback. So if I ran this for you, would this get you to where you want to go? Yeah, that would help. A lot of times they don't even know what the question is. They have a little bit of the question, but as you start conversing with them, it turns into oh, wow, I didn't realize we did that before. So given that we've already done that, could you do this? Yes. What if I did it this way? Would that answer your question? So you kind of show them the answer without the data and get their blessing. And I would impress upon you to think more that way, and they'll love you. They'll love you. I get a lot of compliments from customers who say to me, you just get it. You get it. I don't know how you know. I said, I don't. You told me. I'm just doing what you told me. I didn't figure anything out. But it's listening, I think. Listening and showing enthusiasm to learn. Any other questions? Okay. Any from online? Are you able to take online? I don't think so. I thank you all for taking the time during dinner to come out tonight. I really appreciate you all coming and staying for the whole presentation. And those of you online, thank you so much. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, so before you guys leave, we're going to get a picture, with our e-board, and hopefully some of the Stillman faculty can join us. So can you guys stay put and try to keep your laptops out of frame?